Welcome to Locked In FPL. It's the third episode of the preseason. I'm, of course, FPL Nima. I'm pleased to be joined by two co-hosts today, Jarrod at Fantasy Pavillion on X and Kieran at FPL_discomfort on X. Today, I've brought them on. They're both differential kings, that's for sure. We're going to be discussing the untouched FPL assets you need to buy for game week 1 of the 24-25 Fantasy Premier League season. We're going to wrap up, get out of here in an hour, take all your questions, so start putting them in. We always Q&A and timestamp at the end. But other than that, I'm going to bring in my guests, and then we're going to go into lesser talked about players, I guess. Something exciting, a bit of a change. So yeah, Jarrod, firstly, welcome. Fantasy Pavillion. I see you got the big logo behind you. It's very impressive. If you're listening on podcast, definitely come and take a look. But how are you doing, Jarrod? And tell us where you are to timestamp this. I don't think our listeners know about our relationship going across the ocean.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Nima. Cheers, Kieran, and cheers to all the guys in the comments. I am from the lovely Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, home of Dwight York and Brian Lara. That should give you all some reference. Yes, and of course, I have my own channel, Fantasy Pavillion, where we do the same thing, discuss fantasy. And as Nima suggested, I guess we'll get into that later on, but my playing style, I love the differentials, the unknowns.
I love it. Definitely the unknowns. And I know back in the net that whole years as well, I was absolutely destroyed by you, but we'll come to those stories when we ask about your playing style.
Yes.
On air, he would always recommend players, Kieran, and I would say don't buy them to the viewers. And when they scored, he'd be there tagging me up on X, making sure I knew. So on that note, welcome to the show, Kieran. You're back. First locked in FPL appearance since the net that whole days. Thank you for coming back, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate. Doing well, thanks. And thank you for having me on here for such an exciting episode as well. It's one where when I heard you mention it on the last fantastic episode with Lynn, actually, I was immediately tuning in. And when Jarrod and you sort of invited me to join in for it, definitely jumped on the opportunity because, yeah, I think, I like looking for those players that maybe people aren't talking about yet and taking a punt on them before they're popular. And occasionally, if they get a little bit too popular, decide I don't like them anymore and go searching for the next one instead.
I love it. And I'm sure we'll discuss some more about all that soon. But before that, I actually want to take it right back to the meta. I want to ask you guys about how you feel about the rule changes in FPL this year. There's been no changes for like 8 years apart from some reskins. And I think they introduced chips about 8-9 years ago. So this is the biggest change since then. Is there a favorite change you have? Is there anything you absolutely despise?
Kieran, go ahead.
I don't know if there's anything I despise. I know a lot of people, and I heard you mention it as well, Nima, aren't a fan of a mystery chip because you don't like surprises. You like to meticulously plan, and I kind of like carnage. So it's one where hopefully it causes carnage, but without knowing about it, I kind of don't really have too many opinions about it. I think the one that I like the most is probably the 5-3 transfers. The reason being that nobody knows the right way to utilize that, the right strategy. The fact we can roll it through wild cards and free hits is great, but I definitely take hits through seasons. So that premise of 3-4 transfers is an interesting concept. And I think it just opens up the way that the game's played. And I think when we add those kind of bits of variance or something different into it, it does make it a bit more exciting, a bit more fresh.
I love that. And I think you're going to definitely enjoy if people hold out transfers just because they want to roll them and get to 5 when there's actually opportunities to take, and maybe with some of the types of players today that we're going to talk about. But yeah, well, what about you, Jarrod? Is there anything you particularly like about these? I know you're also a draft player like me, so you do like to kind of, branch out, maybe try FPL challenge as well. Is there any of the changes in that you like?
It's for me, I think I like the fact that they've worked on the bonus points. That there's a few additions to the bonus points because I play Fantrax and Champions League, and there are more factors that go towards points in those formats. So I'm glad that they're looking at that and adding some changes so that the points can be increased, at least with the attackers. So that's great. And well, of course, 5 free transfers here, can't go wrong. But as Kieran said, it's not as straightforward as 5 free transfers. There's a lot of planning to go into that.
There's definitely a lot of planning. I want to go into your play style first, actually, from there. I feel like there's a natural extension. So I'd love to just find out, like, when did you get into FPL? Like, maybe how many seasons you've been playing? Like, what was your favorite memory, I guess, as well, maybe for an asset?
Of course. I never remember the year, but I know it was around the time. I always remember that Manchester played Barcelona Champions League finals, and that's when I started getting into fantasy. My first fantasy was Champions League, and then I got into FPL the subsequent year. Key memory. Well, again, this will show you clearly my playing style. Pookie, right? I remember Pookie at Norwich. Of course, he wasn't a consistent asset, but there was a few purple patches, and I always caught onto the patches. I captained him once and got a sweet haul from him already. So I remember him scoring against City one time as well too. That was a big deal. And well, of course, most memorable Nima would be while watching that whole. And of course, you all have that segment where you have the question segment or suggestion segment. And I mentioned Cody because Wolves at that time had a sweet bracket of games coming up. And it was, for lack of a better term, it was brushed off, right? But of course, it was fun banter, fun style. And I remembered you and tagged you every time. So I captained him at one point and he brought in a sweet haul. So yeah, those are the, but I don't want to just say, yes, I chase on differentials. I chase them when the eye test shows me, well, hey, guys looking great. So another one quickly before we move on to Kieran. I remember too, when Gallagher was still at Palace and they were having a sucky patch up. This was a few years ago. They were having a bad patch up to game week 3, but Gallagher was looking good. Gallagher was looking. So they were just about to play City. And of course, anyone would say, don't bring him in, bad fixture, blah, blah, blah. So I brought him in early just so I could have him, and he scored, and they won. They defeated City, he scored, and he had a sweet patch for at least 5 games. So things like that now. I like to watch the players, look how they play, and then bring them in just in time for the patch.
That sounds like a man after my own heart in terms of your playing style. And my best finishes, I would say, have been when I've done those kind of things. So my best memories equally would be like having Antonio. Actually, I think it was against this same Norwich of your Pookie. And I captained him and he just smashed it. I remember it was insane. It was actually crazy. Was it 4 goals, I think?
It was about that, yeah.
And he was very low owned, let alone captain. Yes. I just remember that was like one of my best finishes ever. And that was what catapulted me. So I do like to sometimes go against the trodden path. But I'm glad we're going to be laughing as well about Cody, because every time Cody got a clean sheet or scored a goal, you were there, as you say, ready to remind me about brushing over him. So Kieran, what about we hear a little bit about your style of play? When did you kind of get into FPL, I suppose, and how long have you been playing? Is there a favorite memory?
Yeah, so I think FPL was always something that I do with friends, but without ever knowing through my early years. You'd sign up to the league at the start of the season, then true casual, you'd set your team, invest a couple of weeks into it, forget about a few transfers, be in a league with one of your best friends who was obsessed with it, who by game week 7 is about 100 points ahead of you, and go, yeah, I'm going to watch football instead. And I'd continue doing it, and I'd pay entry into, just £5-10 with friends, but every year going, have my money, fine. It's the fun of having a bit of banter with them to start. And then I moved over to America and kept doing it and missing every deadline. And it was actually through lockdown when I found out about FPL Twitter and started to understand that captaining a defender, because if they get a clean sheet and they score, that would be a great haul, isn't enough, because those things actually have to be likely and you don't just go for the upside. You have to kind of take things into consideration. So yeah, started to adapt it from there. So yeah, I'm someone who I'd say the last 2 or so years has paid a lot more attention into it and starting to understand how can I apply football into FPL and still enjoy those parts of it. And if I look at memories, I like having fun. I like going for those kind of players where if I have a funny feeling about something, I'll go for it. And yes, that has led to, captaining 3 Sheffield United players last season. I
will never forgive that though. So Jarrod, I laughed at Cody, but I did the same to Kieran. What's crazy is you've both gone from people who I laughed at submitting drafts on the show to being here hosting it with me today in the preseason. So that's what I want this channel's new ethos to be, is that I want anyone who's a viewer to feel like they can come on. Obviously, you got to have a camera. Like I'm not, unless we do dial-ins at some point for Q&A, you need to commit to 30 to 60 minutes if possible. But we've had lots of people on, right? Like Ducky, we've had Greenback Golf Luke. We've had people all over the channel on over the years. So I want to keep that alive and just keep it more of a fireside chat bit more casual, as we said. So with that in mind, then we do a couple of shout outs because we're 10 minutes in. We'll say hi to everyone who's in so far. And then we go into the bulk of the show, right, boys? We go straight into the big untouched FPL assets you need to buy this season. So FPL Veteran was here first. Shout out to my man as well. Obviously, he's come to support Kieran as well on their new venture together as well. Congrats to them on the double pivot pod. So guys, go check that out. Few episodes already been released, so keep up the good work. Now we got who else? Getty FPL second in. Good to see you, buddy. Good evening, all. Thank you for tuning in. All right, Shane. Yeah, we got Claire FPL, one of our haulers. Thank you for joining us. Hope you feel better soon from the dental pain. Got Neil's Apples. Why is 7 under 5% players not an option in the poll? So if you're watching live, there's a poll going for how many under 5% players you will own, and it's 0, 1, 2, or 3. So I always say, like, personally, I wouldn't have more than 2 to 3 differentials in my game week 1 team. So you can see why the poll is kind of rigged to my mentality. But I'm hoping by bringing guests with a different play style to myself this week, we can get a new alternative perspective going into the deadlines next week. So what else do we have? We have Milk was a bad choice back. I'm pretty sure this is the 3rd week in a row. Thank you for tuning in live. I really appreciate it. Sat in my slippers and here for some silky Nima ASMR to caress my senses. Oh, yeah. Now, that sounds like I might need to get into Twitch or something. I don't know if I should do multi-platform streaming, but this is crazy. I feel like it's good to have the support from you guys here live watching. We've got Neil's Apples. Good to see you. We've got Fancy Pavillion, of course. Go check out the channel for Jarrod as well. So shout out to both my guest channels. I'll put the links in the description. If you're on podcast or video, do go check them out and support these guys out. But yeah, otherwise, let's just go straight into it and we'll keep starring the questions for the rest of the show and we'll get things going. I don't know. Do you guys want to kind of just bounce off the guys on the thumbnail to start with? I think that's a good starting point, right? There must be a reason I've picked them. So they're both obviously very low ownership, but I'll go and tell you exactly what their ownership is as we wait, because we got Minty, if you're listening on podcast, and we got Mavididi. So ex-Arsenal player, ex-Gooner. He's here now. Had a smashing season in the championship last year. I think Kieran, was it 12 goals and 7 assists? I believe he got something like that. He's had a pretty solid season. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him. He's a 5.5 million mid. I think he's the same price as Minty. So there's a lot of assets in these options. And if you're looking at a double premium draft this year, I think you're going to need to find the right player in these price points between the 5 and 6.5 million. So that's kind of the reason we're even doing this episode. So we'll go straight into it, boys. I'll timestamp this about 10 minutes in, 11 minutes in, that this is when the real podcast starts, and good to go, guys. Let's steer this ship forward.
Where shall we start then? Shall we kick off with Yankuba Minter?
I think so, because we have a man in a Brighton shirt. Again, if you're not watching on podcast, there's a Brighton jersey on. I know you've basically become a Brighton fan yourself, Kieran. So, and I used to live in Hove in Brighton when I was 8 years old for a year. So went to year 5 primary school there. So it's a fond place in my heart too. So let's start with Brighton.
They've become everyone's second favourite team almost, haven't they? With De Zerbi there and the excitement and the enjoyment of Tony Bloom as an owner and just taking gambles. And I think this is one that just isn't a gamble that he's done. Minter is someone who, I did a thread on him yesterday and just enjoyed every moment of looking at the highlights, because he's just an exciting player who presses high up the pitch, can win the ball back. It's just very attacking. He's a left footer playing on the right, which just is absolute mayhem for defenders because they don't know if he'll go outside, inside. And his performances last year for Feyenoord were just absolutely phenomenal. I'll just have a quick look again to double check the stats. But in terms of goals, which obviously matter a bit more, he played 27 games, started 17 for Feyenoord, 10 goals, 5 assists, which was a goal and an assist per 90 of 0.93. And with Brighton looking like they've loaned or sold Buonanotte, there's less people on that right-hand side. And at 5.5 million in a Hersler system, which should be very front-footed, very attacking, he's one of the most exciting players for me.
So one thing I want to ask you as well is, obviously I've been calling him Minty, so that shows you how much I've been getting about. So I'm glad you corrected.
Well, I don't know how his name is. Like, it was Dutch commentators and Danish commentators and probably the worst of all English commentators, right? So I think we'll wait for that infamous or famous video that comes out at the start of every season when we hear the players tell us you've been getting it wrong this entire time. And
it's like Bruno Fernandes, right?
And we always do it, don't we? We go, I'm going to do it correctly now, and you do for the next one time you say their name and you just revert back to old standards. And we don't have Gabe FPL Lens to kind of put us back on track anymore.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So, what do you? I guess, yeah. What do you think, Jarrod? Like, are you going to start with a Brighton mid? So right now, I have two Brighton players. One of them, I'm getting a bit concerned about in Barco. I'm not so sure about that anymore. Starting the season, but I've got João Pedro. He's been there since the first day the game launched. It feels like too much for me to now also get that midfielder. So, would I swap someone like my, I guess, Hudson-Odoi, Gordon, and Kunku spot? Is that who we're seeing in this spot?
Mm.
Like, do you guys, I guess, have one of those players I mentioned in your draft, or are these players you're going to potentially show us in your drafts in a moment replacements for those players? I'm keen to know.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm very excited by. I want to call him Minter, but we'll get the proper pronunciation. I am definitely have my eye on him. I have my eye on two assets from Brighton. So of course, Baku and Minter. Special shout out to Matoma, but I know people are kind of lukewarm on him. But for sure, Minter looks exciting as Kieran covered everything from his days in Eredivisie. He looked great, was solid, and could cause a lot of problems on that wing there for Brighton against anybody. So I'm definitely excited by him. And just a difference. And again, Brighton always seem to scout really well. I think if there's an award for scouting, Brighton has to definitely win that every season. They always seem to find the right players to replace some of their key losses. And definitely Minta and Baku looking very good as well too for the assist points as well too. So definitely on my radar from Brighton.
I like it. So I know we could make this a Brighton pod for the remainder of the 45
Well,
minutes, Kieran.
Can we just? I do want to give a couple of words to two. Just they're not options right now, but just keep an eye on them. Under Hösler, his central midfielders don't play in centre midfield. When they're going through the second phase of building from the back, they actually drop behind the players that are marking them and create so much space. And I recommend to people go and look at Marcel Hartel's heat map at St. Pauli and Jackson Irvine. They're both phenomenal. We're talking sort of, I think Hartel got 29 attacking returns, goals and assists last season. And it's because of the positions he takes up, the space he creates, and dragging defenders. So I'm not sure which of Belieber or Whiffer is going to be that player for Brighton, because Belieber's a box-to-box player, Whiffer's a bit more of a passer and progressive carrier. So it's hard to tell because it has to complement what the fullbacks are doing on the other side.
Right.
So keep an eye on that, because we could have a 5 million asset for certain fixture runs that could be getting double-digit goals and assists this season.
Mm-hmm. Fully agree.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. In terms of how I want to go about this, I think to make it a bit more interesting as well, guys, in the chat, let us know if there's any players under 5% or 10% ownership that you have. I think formally, actually, this might be a good time to take veterans question now, in fact, straight from X directly, because this will kind of set the rest of the conversation for me. So they say, like, now that FPL's amassed over 11 million players, what's the new percentage value that defines a differential? And they say it used to be 10 to 25%, but do we think that number has risen or fallen? So for me, I think I still consider it under 25%, but that might just be because of live FPL. So obviously for me, like captaincy as well, under 125% effective ownership, that's still a differential captaincy. So, if you got 200% of the points from a player, 125% is the same equivalent as 25% just for owning. So for me, that's still my magic number, and I love to play it like it's poker. So I'm always looking at who owns which players, how many of their points I'm gaining.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to, my first article 4 years ago, starting out on FPL, was writing about the transfer trends each week on Hub, and it was like which players are being sold and which ones are being bought as their replacement. What's the most popular combo? And then do I think that like the data is going to catch up with it, or will they carry on? So many times I stay too patient on dead horses. But sometimes, like you guys, I backed the eye test and got in before the first return, just before, because they only really stay a differential, I'd say, for maybe 2-3 game weeks. Soon as someone returns that many weeks in a row, most active players own them, especially if they're super cheap, right?
Yep.
It is a tricky one, right? Because with an increasing player base, you should theoretically see more of a spread in player ownership. So I'd wonder how many players are actually owned as the season progresses by active people that are above 25%. For me, whenever I look at a differential, I feel like it's got to be single figures in percentage ownership. It's got to be sub 10%, ideally sub 5% if you want to get into that spicy zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fully agree. That's what I was thinking. When you said 25, I was like, 25? Yeah, way
You were
too
like,
high.
what, a quarter of the game have him? You were like, this guy's crazy. Yeah.
Well, if you captain a 25% owned player, then if someone captains it, they're now 50% owned. You don't want that. Well, it'd need all of the 25% owners to captain that
Yeah,
differential.
and
It's
then
just
Yeah,
not
we need
don't-
all of them to cover. Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
Barco game week 5. No.
Cool. I think we'll take some of the players that are being put in the chat as we go, but I just want to take that question from Veteran at the moment because I thought that was a good time to take it rather than the Q&A. So I'll be answering from a 25% perspective. These boys will be giving you players I might never have touched, which is why the episode is called the Untouched FPL Assets You Need to Buy. It's almost like, I guess they're like kind of, some of them are sub 1%. I think when I looked, both players on the thumbnail now, they were sub 1%. I know at least my boy Steven is, and maybe now's a good time to sidetrack to him. So Leicester, I had a look. You know, we had a few weeks ago in the show, right? We had the stats up for the goal involvements, the season-long top projected goal involvements from Rob TFPL on Twitter. And if you look here, my man sneaks in with 10.9 attacking returns right there. Just in the bottom right of the graphic, he's in the top players in the betting markets at the moment as it stands for goal and assists. He's only predicted, score 7 goals and assist 4, but he's above the likes of Alanga and Smith Rowe, who I'm seeing in teams, and he's an even low. Like Smith Rowe is a differential, Alanga's a differential, but I think Mavididi is even smaller. Like I honestly think he's 0.1, 0.8. So that's my kind of punt. What do you boys say about that? I might actually go into the season with him because I think if Vardy's going to have a bit of a decline as well and not start as much, maybe more of the goal scoring is up to him. And when I had a look at like Leicester's goal scorers across all comps in the last couple of seasons, he's up there as like the second or third biggest contributor, and the people who were contributing the most aren't going to be. So I just feel like he's gonna have to take up extra duties. Am I being naive? Have I oversimplified it? I've kind of looked at season-long data, and he seems to contribute for them and be key, and I think he's going to become more key.
I'm a bit lukewarm on them. I'm aware of what you're saying there, but they have some great fixtures, like what from like game week 5, Everton, and after that Arsenal. But from after Arsenal game, they have some sweet matches, and I think I'm looking more for Leicester assets then, right? And funny enough, I'm gonna call a really funny name for you, D. Cordova Reed. He has my eye a lot because he was in and out for Fulham, but he was solid, very solid. Pick up some real key goals. So I want to see how he fits into the team as well too. And I'm watching Winks as well. Don't sleep on Winks. So those are the guys that I have my eye on for Leicester, but not until like maybe game week 6 or so, when their fixtures turn real nice and they have a nice run against where they could potentially, get some victories and of course score lots of goals. So that's what I'm looking at. And I always love Vardy, but as you said, Vardy is declining, but Vardy is Vardy.
He is still an exciting one. It might be quite fun as well to have him in like a draft. But for me, I play so many draft leagues. Like I played one 2 days ago. I'm playing one on Sunday on fan tracks like you. I then have a normal official FPL one. Now I've downloaded this other app that everyone seems to be talking about, Sleeper, but I'm the only one who doesn't have an affiliation yet. I've downloaded it to see what's the fuss. I hear it's fantastic for NFL. So I had a look and the UI looks good so far. I did like a mock draft just to see what it would look like. And my phone was pinging off while it was warning me that it's auto picking. So it knows what to do. Very cool mobile first. I'll give it a bit more of a try. Maybe I'll make a mini league. So if you're watching live, let me know if we just make like our own casual free sleeper mini league and just see what happens with that. They have some predictions. So I've like predicted the game week 1 results, Kieran. I'll just pick how I think each game will go. And I've only predicted 1 draw in the first 10 fixtures.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, I've had it go on it as well. And I think what's interesting is in different leagues, you can actually put different predictions, right? You have to set your prediction in each one. So I think in one of them, I've got about 5 draws because first game of the season.
You're more advanced than me then. I've barely even entered a league. I think I've joined a public league.
Like I said, at the start of seasons, I think I'd go, yeah, this will be a good idea. And then slowly as seasons go on, you kind of prioritize your interest into one area or 2 areas more than others. I think just to quickly chime in on Steffi, Love his first name. It's just fun to say, right? Good old Steffi. Yeah, look, you and I both know that in the youth setup for Arsenal, he was fantastic, really good for goals and assists per game. And then he went out to sort of Charlton and did the same. And if Leicester hadn't made the signings that they've made, I'd be more interested. I think, the ones that have been mentioned and Buonanotte go in there as well just means that they become a more interesting. Yeah. And again, he's 5 million, right? But Leicester to me just feel like that team that almost like a Luton, where I think they're going to score a lot of goals, but concede a lot of goals. They'll just go into games and attack. You can see that Spurs Leicester game, first game of the season, being like a 4-2 affair type of thing. So yeah, I think nothing wrong with owning a cheap Leicester midfielder at some point.
All right. Yeah, no, that sounds like we've got to just figure out which one, right? But in terms of assets, I'm going to actually pull out some of the players in your teams next. I think this is a good place for us to go next. And I say your teams. I know Jarrod's very keen to make sure we know it's not his team, but that raises the questions. But this is, I guess, a differential draft. Would you call it? It's not your actual team. It's just based on what you said about what ownership you consider to be low.
Yeah. I just try to put most of the guys that I think you should consider. You don't have to have them. Just some of the guys, and I just wanted to talk about that hate crime against Martinelli. Martinelli, you guys are sleeping on Martinelli. That's all I'm going to say. Do not sleep on Martinelli this season. That's all I'm going to say on the Martinelli front. Of course, before putting up this team, Beto, well, as we discussed off air, he may not be with Everton. We're not sure yet, so we're still waiting on that news. So I'll just focus on the key guys. Doucouré is someone close to my heart. For me, is a bias, but he has saved me many, many times, even in Fantrax. He's a solid Fantrax player for those who play Fantrax. I have a draft tonight, right? Doucouré is one of those guys, key passes forward, pops up with the odd goal here or there, and Everton will need him. Right, he is one of those key guys. When he's injured, Everton dips. When he's up, Everton is up. So Doucouré is a key player for me. Muniz was solid last season with great goal contribution. And I think once a fit Smith Rowe is in and behind him, and also Robinson, because Robinson he's a bit more brave on the wings and running forward, whipping in some great crosses. He now has Smith Rowe and Muniz, and he will be the target. So I think assist points can increase there for Robinson. So that's why he's there. Munoz, again, solid last season. So I'm going based on last season. Of course, that's the beauty of this period now. We know nothing. None of us, we don't know anything. We're just going in based on what we know from last season. And Munoz, for me, was solid. Crystal Palace have been, to me, one of the best in the transfer markets alongside West Ham. So I think Crystal Palace looking very solid, and Munoz will definitely be a part of their success. Dalot, I just have him in there as one of those guys pops up with great assists. Manu, I'm not rating Manu this season, but Dalot, for me, solid player and could have popped up with some assists if Rashford and co please get on the end of some good goals, right? Of course, and the bench. So I wanted to bring up someone who's not here, right? I wanted to talk about, so you see on my bench, I have Davis. He is from Ipswich, right? So he's on the bench from Ipswich. 18 assists last season. So I'm looking at him. Now, again, you don't have to chase Ipswich players. They have a hard start to the season. But I always say to Kieran, if you agree with me, yes, we look at the matchups. You look at the matches, you look at the FDR. But sometimes these teams could score. It's always great if your assets at least score and assist. You still get the points. It doesn't matter if they get drummed 8-0, 10-1, 2-5-2. They still scored. They still contributed. City conceded almost every game last season, right? So don't let FDR and things scare you. But of course, they have some tricky matchups at the start. But I think when things level out, or you're just looking for an enabler, Davis is a great shout from Ipswich. As I said, 18 assists last season, 2 goals. So that's 20 goal contributions across the board there. That's not terrible. So definitely someone I think you should consider. So that's my initial start there. My opening arguments there, Nima.
No, I like that. And I think just something I would add is, so this was actually, again, from Rob TFPL on X, the projected goal involvements for defenders. And Davis comes in here with 7 projected goal involvements, 1.5 goals, 5.5 assists. So for anyone on podcast, that puts him in top think it's top 10. Is it 1, 2? The only people above him are Trent, Porro, Trippier, Robertson, James, Munoz, Matson, and then Davis. He's above Guardiola and White. Yeah, it looks like a good pick to me at some point. And maybe one thing I do want to say is for anyone watching who tuned in late, this team obviously doesn't have any premiums. Like I think the lack of captaincy option. As an FPL team, if you'd submit this next week, and for the RMT I'm gonna do with FPL Feather and FPL Plonker, the roast of my team, I would be giving this like a 1 out of 10 if you were lucky. I'm not gonna lie, but because I just want to make sure viewers also understand that this isn't a proper draft. This is just all the low-owned players. But I think Kieran's draft will be a mix because he'll maybe have like the low-owned, more expensive assets in there too. So maybe in your case, my question for you was with that in mind, Jarrod, if this was actually your team, let's say you got rid of certain players, who would be the more expensive ones you'd bring in? So like between players like say Bruno Fernandes or you know, like players who again aren't very highly owned, but they're not maybe at sub 5%, but they're still sub 25%. So more my kind of EO. Like Son, right? Someone who goes for Son instead of Salah, for example. Like I've seen the Son and Saka double up, right? That's the most recent draft I've seen. The Haaland only, no Salah, and then you have like Son and Saka or Son and Palmer. And
yeah,
again,
that's
I hadn't even considered it, right? So this is crazy. What do you think? What would you do? One premium and yeah, one premium, and what else would you do?
No, it's possible to at least have 2 premiums. But for me, I'll quicker go Salah over Haaland. Of course, you must have Haaland, right? Yeah, but it is possible to have teams with like Salah, Haaland. You have Muniz up top. You can have Odegaard, Gordon. You can still have your Vardio, your Gabriel, your Anderson, those kind of guys. Eze, and that's a solid team right there, right? That's not a half bad team, and you can still have and you can have teams with both Salah and Haaland and still have these kind of guys around you. And you can still afford your 8s, you can still afford your 6, you can still afford your 7s. So it's not terrible. This is just to prove and show that, hey, you can still have your 2 mediums and still fit in some solid guys around you. But again, this, as I said before, this team is just to illustrate, you know, the low-owned guys that can contribute and do well. But I am very tempted to make a separate account and use this team just to see how they go. I am very, very tempted. But it is possible to have Salah, Haaland, and you can have guys like Gabriel, as I said, Vardio, Anderson, Eze, Rodgers and all. He's another one that that's on everyone's lips. Odegaard, Gordon, and Muniz. And I just call out a solid team right there.
So it's crazy because the value is there, you're right. But then like I look at some of these teams, right, that we could have had last season. And in last season's pricing, they would have cost in this season's pricing like 119 million. So I also look at that and I find it crazy that we're in this spectrum of things where you're telling me at the same time there's enough value there is this season to still build something. But the teams that we had last season cost 20 million more than the starting price of this season. So it's also crazy because it means we're almost being forced to forego what we once knew. There are going to always be good players that could get points that are not in. So every draft I've loved, there's always at least one person missing, whether it's like there isn't a second premium defender or there's no Trent or there's no, you know, like 8 to 10 million midfielder slot, or there's like a dead 5th or 3rd slot in the midfielder forward. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I've seen a draft where I was like, you know what, this is it. Like, I really like it. Nothing's quite felt like that to me this season. And normally in pre-seasons, like I say, I have like 8, 9 players, they feel set. And then it's just like a couple of differentials for fun I throw in based on pre-season and how that goes. So what are your thoughts with that? Because obviously we talked about the changes in the game earlier, and I think this is going to help us identify these bargain kind of differential players more this season and make more of them.
I think we're just creatures of, if you give people a budget, they're convinced they have to spend it all. And that's not necessarily the truth, particularly at the start. You know, I was, and I'll toot my own horn because it's fun, but as soon as Cole Palmer moved to City last season, I put a tweet out going, FPL just became an awful lot easier because you were getting a 5 million asset that was going to be a guaranteed starter and attacking position for Chelsea. Didn't quite expect him to be as good as he was, but the point is that like these players exist and you don't need to fill it with the biggest names in a team. If you're looking at certain things, you know, and it's a common theme going around at the moment of, do you go with this or do you spread the funds? And it's not necessarily about the funds being spread perfectly. It's about making sure that you're getting the most points each week. And Haaland could score 30 points for someone in a team that scores 60, and another team could score 60 without Haaland, right? And it means nothing, and it is just getting all of those bits right. So I think, if anything, this has just created more excitement, more opportunity for change. And I think the fact that people can roll transfers, unless I'm mistaken, most seasons we went into it with 4.0 defender, 4.5 striker, 4.5 midfielder, and we just had our core players, and you'd be like, fine, one sub, but I'll just see how it figures out soon to start with. This year, we seem to be going, well, I want to roll my transfers for the first 4 weeks, so I need to... And that's what the added variable is now, where if you're going to go with that strategy, you're going to have to make more sacrifices than someone who goes, yeah, I got transfers, this is a good 11, here's a good 12th man, let's roll with it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm someone, just to say as well, I always spend my money. Like I try to leave 500,000 or 1 million if I can, but in terms of spending all my money, I mean on the first 11. So yeah, especially my bench, it's always like a 4.5 million forward or midfielder, 4 million defender, maybe a second 4 million defender if I can. You know, last week I think Lynn had a team with 4 million defenders. So don't worry, this team, Jarrod, even compared, like, you know, there's been all kinds of teams on this preseason. They're all welcome equally. But on that note, we'll go to Kieran's one, and we'll cover some of the assets here as well, because this is a bit more of, I guess, like a realistic team that you might go into a game week 1 with. For the podcast listeners, this one has a Haaland, Isaac, and Havertz up top. We've got Son, Gibbs, White, Diego Jota, Smith Rowe in the midfield. We've got Ben White, Pedro Porro, Barco, and Raya in the back. And then on the bench, we have Liss, who I did not even know was a goalkeeper you could pick, Bergvall, Davis, and Taylor. So I see Davis is in both drafts, just in terms of comparing those. I'm having a little look. Any other players? You both have Smith Rowe. Okay.
Yeah. I left out the Brighton players because I left it for Kieran. But I had Brighton. Yeah, I would have had 2 Brighton players in there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Minter's not in this draft, because I just clicked on a picture when you asked for it, right, on one of my recent ones, and I'd say 95% of my drafts have Minter in there and no Diogo Jota, or they have Odegaard and Darwin, kind of different variations in there, because I think look, we are coming up to a week until deadline, right? So there's going to be another 50 variations before that.
A week tomorrow, right? It's crazy.
Correct.
It's so close.
It'll be fun. All of those last minute transfers at Fest. But yeah, look, I'll just add in on the Leif Davis thing. I love McKenna and his tactic, and one thing just to pay attention to is what Ipswich love to do. They'll concede a lot of goals from playing out at the back. Mo Salah will probably get a goal from them playing out the back at the start of the season, because it's a risk, but he'll keep doing it. And the whole goal of it is you get the ball over to the right back, whoever's in that position now, and you actually pull the rest of the team over there, leaving a massive space for Leif Davis on the left-hand side. And it worked game after game last year. Just, look, Leif's got wide open lane now because the right midfielder's gone across. So, yeah, I've gone early on him purely because I don't know what my strategy is going to be about rolling transfers or wildcard. I want to keep my options open, but he's someone that I do like from game week 3 onwards. And as Jarrod said, I would not be surprised if he got 1 or 2 attacking returns in the first 2 game weeks, given the fact that home teams, newly promoted, yeah, fine, let's just go out and attack. And another thing that I found really interesting is that last year, Luton were the 4th best team, I guess, for goals scored in games, in terms of out of teams that failed to score, they were towards City, Liverpool, and Spurs were the only teams that failed to score less than them. And we saw that with Luton, right? They'd lose like 7-2. Like they'd always go on the attack. And I think Ipswich and Leicester, and even Southampton, we're going to see teams like that this year. Smith Rowe, look, we've already spoken about. Arsenal defence, I guess, is a bit differential going Raya, but Arsenal is the best defence in Europe, and I don't want to overthink anything and just get the points. And then, I don't think this one's too different. I think I've gone Bergvall instead of Winks, because if Bergvall locks down his position, we are looking at another Cole Palmer on our hands here. You know, someone that, if he starts week in, week out for Spurs, which he may or may not, easily 6.5 million by season end. And Jota, look, I just need to have some Liverpool attack, so I don't know who that will be, and it will probably be someone differential one way or the other. But
could it be Darwin?
It could, yeah. Darwin up top, Odegaard into the middle, but I'm not concerned about. I've seen some people get concerned about Kai with Gabby looking incredible, etc. Yeah, fine. You were at the game yesterday, Nima, and Kai started in midfield and got 2 assists, and went up top and scored. So it's Kai. He's involved in everything Arsenal. So's Odegaard. So's Jota. So's Darwin. I think with Slot, Jota and Darwin will both just be better. Gibbs White, I'm not sure about in the team. That probably is my Minter spot. But the key thing about this team is the plan is to have 1 million in the bank, because to the point we were saying earlier, my thinking is if I roll one transfer, then in game week 3, I can bring in Palmer and Watkins for that good fixture run, rather than keep my transfers. I can then get that Chelsea and Villa asset coming into it.
So we got a few comments as well on your drafts. We got firstly the no Minter from either of you.
I clicked the wrong image. That's my defense. I'm shocked. I could send Nima about 50 of my other pictures and they would have had him in there. Yeah, I failed.
We got Woe Triple Arsenal from Ignatius Brian Laxana. Good to see you, buddy. We got Colin Bugler asks, Kieran, does it feel weird having 3 Spurs?
I had 4 at one point. I had Solanke, rumoured 4. So I went, Solanke could be good, and I put it in there. And then I realised there's 2 reasons why I liked it. One, their fixtures are good. But secondly, I get to remove 4 Spurs players. That'd be quite enjoyable throughout the season.
Yeah, I think for me, right, and I like to do well at FPL. I'm a competitive person, but I still love to put the team ahead of FPL. So, like, I'm the kind of person that I will have a Spurs captain in my FPL team. And then, like, if they blank and Spurs lose, I will not care how badly it affects me, like with the red arrow in FPL. So it's a tough times, isn't it? But I do like your Bergvall pick. I think that could actually end up being a season breaker. I think it was the above average lads mentioned him as well on their pod. And I thought that was quite an interesting shout, because they said everyone's on Winks, but actually they got their eyes on the wrong player, I think.
And they're very knowledgeable Spurs fans and FPL players, right? You combine those 2 things together, and yes, look, you and I have bias towards Arsenal players.
It's good to level it out with them. Yeah, that's true. That's why I thought I'd shout out them as well, because while I'm saying that I want Spurs to blank, they're still also good friends of the show and good friends of myself. So we will long may that continue. So let's see what else we got here. So a few questions on should we just go to the Q&A? I think because we could spend the last 20 minutes just taking all, because there's like 29 comments I've starred. And
I guess beforehand, just before we jump into that, Jarrod, is there any players that you had on your list that you think is worth giving a shout that might not come up in the Q&A?
Actually, we could roll. I have a question for you though. What's your thoughts on Palace this season though? Like those Eze and those kind of guys. You excited about those guys at all or no?
They've got to be a wait and I feel like they're more of a wait and see. I know models are going to like them because models don't understand that Elise's gone and that Mateta's still at the Olympics, which are pretty major factors, right?
Mateta, yeah.
I think Kamada's good, but I think anyone who watched Palace at the end of last season, that connection and relationship between Elise, Eze and Mateta was what made it all tick. And I think he's a fine option, and I think Palace will be fine. But I just think there's more. I don't know. I'm not as bought into the hype with it because I think there's a lot of uncertainty around Palace with who will be there, who won't be there, and when they all come back into it.
Yeah, and I saw someone mention Sa. Now, I have Sa there for a reason. Now people underestimate Ismail Sa. He had a great AFCON. He's a great player. I think he could add some really good value there, especially I said some key players might be missing in the opening week. Watch out for Sa. He mightn't hit the ground running first 2, but Sa is going to be solid for Palace. So I'll again, jumping on him early, have him. That's how I move. I analyze them, scan them, because I do AFCON fantasy as well. So that's how I watch all these things. So I'm like, all right, Sa, and I saw him come back to the Premier League. I'm happy. Sa is an amazing player.
You've already been scouting them in advance.
Long time. So
I don't think our viewers know about, when we get to the Q&A, maybe I'll ask you a question about that. Do you remember there was that Twitter Spaces with the Trinidad legend, the ex-captain? I don't think our viewers know about that.
Yes.
That was a good times.
Yeah, that was good times in truth.
I was really happy about those days. But so I haven't been on Twitter Spaces since, I don't think. Like, I listen to them these days. But
yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I'm out of it. Years. Yeah, I'm out of it to Twitter Spaces. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'll thank the haulers, and then we'll go straight to the questions, because I think, and also eventually, guys, the logo will be coming in the next, as I say, week or 2. So I'll figure out a new name for haulers and super haulers and the YouTube membership and the Patreon. it's a good time to say if you've enjoyed the episode, 45 minutes in, if we made you laugh, if you've laughed at us, with us, whatever, please do hit that like button to help us get out there and help the channel as we relaunch and get into a new audience as well. So our super haulers on YouTube, FPL Robbie, Greenback Golf, Harbour Boy, David Harrison, thank you so much. Our haulers, Dread FPL Podner, Kevin Rose, Blonde, FPL Teacher, Donny FPL, Tom Gorsuch, Lindsay, Akshay, Dom, Claire FPL, Tursks, Catherine A, Harry Not Kane, Neil, Benjamin Lockwood, FPL Robert Ducky, Big Mike, Grady, Jaskrin Singh, FPL Eric, BW Splitter, the FPL Juice Show, and FPL Discomfort is back himself while he's live on air. So that's good of you, my friend. And then our Patreons, last but not least, Elron, FPL California, Mike Burke, Draft Alchemy, and Dr. Green Thumb. Thank you all for making the show happen. And I think we just go to the Q&A and we enjoy taking questions, guys. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do this. So
I just want to thank Kieran for that. Kieran, I want to thank you for that Burval show. I'm going to add into my fan track list. Thank you very much.
No, I'll also do a shout out for two players that I don't think will be discussed in any of this, but Elliot Anderson at Forest, keep an eye on him, because when he was at Newcastle, he started every game, and I think he'll be a little bit more attacking. I don't know how he's doing in the friendly today, but I know he started. And also, I don't rate them so much as a team, but I do think Wolves have a few decent players to keep an eye on. And we might be looking at a very cheap striker option up top there for them. So, yeah, another one, again, not one that I think people necessarily go for, but Strand Larsen, I just love him. I think he's fantastic, and I think he's someone who worth people going and watching a YouTube highlight reel for him, because in the Wolves team, I think, yeah, he should be pretty good. But now let's move on to the ones that people actually want to know about.
So the first one, and these are quick fire, guys, because we're going to get out of here in under 60 minutes this week. But first one's from X. We've got Ignatius Bryan asking, how about looking at Everton attackers? Good fixtures to punt, maybe.
So last season, Everton failed to score in 12 out of 38 games. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin underperformed his XG by over 6. And I think that's because he's not very good at finishing rather than anything else, personally. And I think Everton are a team who are very good at staying strong and solid at the right times. So I think it would definitely be a punt, but I think, you know, there's probably more reliable and exciting punts out there in terms of teams that can score goals and have exciting attacks. Maybe if they get a new striker in, it might be worth monitoring. But I think, as Jarrod said, you know, there are fun ones in Decore. There is a Dwight McNeil, perhaps. But I wouldn't be going up to a Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
No. Yeah,
fair enough. I have him in my draft, so that's reassuring to hear. He was like the only striker left by the 4th round pick or something.
Oh, no.
How many people are in your draft?
10. My first 3 picks were Isaac, De Bruyne, and Porro, and then it just declined.
10-person draft leagues are hard.
Yeah, every other person just doesn't play. Like half my players are minutes risks, or they're only going to start in game week 1, and then you don't know if they'll carry on. So it's tough times. But we'll go from Twitter. We got one more question on Twitter, and then we'll come to the live ones in the YouTube. So this is a team from Sacred Silence.x. So this is 7 under 5% team, 4 on the bench, and not enough captain premium options. So there's 7 players in this team under 5%, but then it also still has some key players like Isaac, Haaland. It has Eze and Kunku, Son, Diego Jota, Trent Guardiola. But then it has the likes of, say, Munoz, Davis, Sangare, Vestergaard. It has a Vladimirson in the sub for Flecken, the 4 million goalkeeper. So it's a good team. I actually really like that. The only thing is, it feels like I would only ever captain Haaland in that team, and maybe Isaac. So that team as a whole, there isn't that much going on, as you say, captaincy wise, but it's a decent team with the percentages kept in mind. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's a great one. And so yeah, this was actually the first comment as well. So that coincided well. And as we work backwards, so what else do we have? We have Claire's comment. So she says, I'm 1 for differentials, but the lowest of 5.5%. Callum Hudson and Odoi is the only one right now. Concert is no longer my differential this season. I think last season, I remember Concert was Claire's big differential throughout the season.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got a comment for you, Jarrod. So I'm a veteran saying, yes, Jarrod, big up the islands, even a smoother voice than Nima. Another eye test player. Don't let the data robots win. Okay,
Wow.
the models are being targeted. Getty FPL. Kieran's picks at the Euros fantasy was brilliant. The ball recovery king. Neil's Apples is helping me out here as well. So Finanche. Okay, I think that's a bit better for me than last time. Okay, that one's not there. FPL Sparta, thank you for tuning in, buddy. So this is the team. Okay, Calvert-Lewin, Jota, Davis. So those were the 7 players on that team. Yeah. Harry Doherty, Chris Wood. Any thoughts on him, guys? I think we'll stop on that one. Some of these are shout outs, some of them are questions, but get your questions in if you do have questions. But we're gonna get to the end of the show in the next 10 minutes or so. So start getting your questions in, guys.
No, there are better options, but fan tracks wise or draft wise, sure, because he's on my list in case I need to pull him. But he was solid for fan tracks last season. So yeah, if that's what you're thinking about, sure. But FPL wise, no, they're better. There are other options. Honestly, I don't say better, but the other options at the same price range I could get that are solid and will contribute a little more. Chris Wood always needs a little more time to rev up the engine. That's my only problem with Chris Wood.
I'm always surprised about Taiwo as well, by the way, because like I've seen some teams have Taiwo in them to start the season. So is that not a bit weird? Like,
no, that's fine.
I think that's the problem, right? I think Forest are one of those where my draft that you showed has Gibbs White in it, and Claire said about Cho, who they could all be good options, but Forest have signed new players and will continue to sign other attacking players. And I think people like Cho, we're not sure about. I think, I'd expect Wood to start, and I actually like him for the start of the season just on the fixtures more than anything else. But that's also because I'm not sort of planning to role transfer. I'm willing to sort of go with the flow and play a normal game and then see what evolves as it goes through. Yeah. So I think it is very dependent. If you're someone who's looking to role transfers, then I'd probably steer clear of most Forest players that aren't Morgan Gibbs White if you want to get any of the attacking.
Yeah. Because for me, the only Forest player I will jump on, before with like Anya. I love Anya, but I don't know the format of the team yet, you know?
So not Cells in goal. No one's here. Everyone's shouting about Cells in goal, and that our boy wasn't in the squad. 6'8" goalkeeper who's going to get in because he's 6'8".
So Cells will just somehow concede 9 goals more than he's meant to in like 6 games or something.
They're also looking at Johnston still, apparently.
I think that's it. They might get Johnson or Ramsdale, and if they got one of those, I think they become an option. I think
that would be exciting on wild card with Ramsdale. I would jump in on that.
That would be better, right? But I think if I was going for any Forest defenders, I'm a big fan of Murillo, and he's just a ball-carrying centre-back that if he sees a gap, he will go on a run with that ball until he gets to the edge of the box, and he'll get a goal. He'll get a couple of goals this season. But again, I'm not going for a Forest defender.
Fair enough. Quick shout out from Trophy FPL. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. Good to see you. Hectic FPL. Jacob Murphy, for those on Wildcard 4, has been really overlooked.
Massively. He started like the last 10 games for Newcastle as the right midfielder, right? And we don't know what's going on with Gordon. We know that Barnes, if he plays on the left, right? And then, so you're going, what are you doing? Barnes and Gordon together and making Gordon play on the right, which isn't.
I don't think he wants to play them together, right?
So that's it. So like it's Gordon on the left, and does that then just say Jacob Murphy is going to continue to hold that position down? And I think just because he's not a flashy name or player, he's one that we're kind of just letting fly by. I think if he was a new signing that joined them last season and played the last 10 and then pre-season came on fire, then everyone would probably have him in. So I think Hector's got a good shout there.
Yeah, if his name was Jakob, everybody would have him. Yeah,
Jakob Mafinho.
Yeah.
We got Getty FPL, Lewis Hall, my other punt at 4.5 million is 1.3% owned. So I think TT also had him in the draft when he first came on a couple of weeks ago for the first episode of the preseason. So if you've missed those, the first episode, the Newcastle episode, then there's the Liverpool episode, and then this one's a bit more of the Untouched episode. So all the differentials. But yeah, Lewis Hall we really like. I would definitely go check out the Newcastle segment for anyone who missed that. We have Andreas and Matson, but they could well be gone before game week 1 starts.
Yeah.
That's not. I know Andreas sounds like that world is looking like they might not have him or he's not going to start. And Smith Rowe is the one I'm keeping my eye on there, and Muniz is someone I start with.
Yeah.
Matson I'll keep an eye on though, because I think I've steered clear of going Konsa just because I think Matson's worth way more than $500,000 more than Konsa. That if I was having Villa defence, it's got to be Matson or nobody for me, because I'll just be so upset at watching Konsa get 6 points when Matson gets like 10. I think he's an incredible player, but it is dependent on whether he stays. He should, though, with the money they've spent on him. He's now their most expensive player, I think, that they've signed after selling DRB.
I think let's keep going quick fire because we've got 5 minutes left. So
Sure.
let's keep going. So does anyone have any comments on Cannon at Leicester if going into a 3-5-2? I'm assuming that means that Cannon is a third forward.
Yeah, he's one of the other forwards. Yeah, so it's him, Vardy, Daka. Yeah, not much goal contributions last season. So I mean, not bad shout again. But I'll quicker go Vardy. I'd rather go.
But I guess
Vardy,
if you
so-
had to play that formation, right?
Yeah.
Is he maybe the best 4.5 million forward?
Sure. I won't say best, but I won't say best, but definitely an option. Sure.
But
Sure,
whoever
definitely.
you get, you should not be needing to play them at all, is my mentality, because that's the type of team I
Yeah.
get. And I tried to play it. I think last season I was trying to play João Pedro, and I always timed that wrong as well. So I remember that. I hate having money on my bench and rotating. I get it wrong every week. So Kulusevski, 2% ownership is mad.
Correct.
At the moment, obviously, there's the Solanke news as well, but like we're getting
Yeah.
close. Like the season's a week from tomorrow, as you said. Even if he comes, will he start the first game, for example? What are your thoughts? Kulusevski, either of you would consider him?
I wouldn't have a Spurs player in my team, mate.
You had 3 of them in your draft.
True, that's why I don't know. Do you know what it is? Like, would I consider him? Yes, but with the transfer window open, you know that he's not holding down that position. And whilst I think he might play, I do think, Brennan probably is better on that right. There's just uncertainty, right? I think he's probably a 1 or 2 week punt. So if you're willing to use the transfer to get off of him, then he could be strong upside. Like you said, Nima probably does start that first position as a 9. But beyond that, you just don't know.
Couple quick comments. We're going to keep going here because it looks like you might need to be going somewhere as well. But so Vardy party, 15 million average players per game, will still be getting more points than Darwin. Yeah, maybe. I think Darwin is. Imagine Vardy scores Darwin. I'll crack up. I don't think it will happen though. Get the FPL. Robinson is my closest, 5.9%. Yep, I do like Robinson.
Solid. Yep, solid.
Nehal, Minte being slept on currently, and I'd like to keep it that way. What else do we have? We have Ignatius Bryan saying Man United will somehow struggle versus Fulham, though. Let's see what else we got. We've got Quansah is 1%, so that was shouted out in the Liverpool episode. Jesus is 7 million, so there was talks of him and Havertz and whether this makes Havertz a bit of a worry. I know for Ignatius it does. I don't think for me it does. I think either way, Jesus will probably start centre forward, and if he gets subbed off, then I think Havertz will have some minutes up there either way, like off the bench at worst case. So like whatever's going on, he's going to be on the pitch. He's going to either be dueling in the midfield to win those battles there, or he's going to go up top once Jesus gets subbed out. So
correct.
For now, I feel like he's going to play and he's going to have a great goal scoring season. So I have no worries. I'm not worried about this reverse out of position stuff. Elron, João Pedro and Rogers versus Muniz and Winks or Bergvall. I'd go for the first one just because of like both being more regular starters for you. But Muniz
I like
is nice as well, right? But I wouldn't go for the second personally.
Yeah. I rather Muniz, but João Pedro Rogers not bad shout. Yeah.
I quite like Somerville at West Ham, but the 6 million price has put me off. Has that put anyone off, the 6 million price?
No. He's on my radar, but more fan tracks. But definitely watching Somerville. It's a good transfer. Really good transfer.
Let's see who else we have in the chat. We have Maken, get Kevin Sharda at Brighton, 0.1 Brentford even, sorry, 0.1%. Oh man, I got him as like an early pick in drafts last season, I think it was, and it didn't quite work out for me.
No.
But hopefully this year's his year though.
He's good in flashes. He's really good in flashes. Really good in flashes. But that's it. He's great in like just a few spurts, a few games. That's it. Not for the long haul.
Yeah, if you want any of them, I'd rather keep an eye on Lewis Potter for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we got one from Elron, and then we're going to slowly get ourselves out of here. Pretty certain I'm going to gamble on Quansah, Rogers, and Robinson are my other bench guys. Do you think it's worth it, or just go with Quansah?
Yeah.
Quansah and Robinson, or get Quansah instead of one of those. No, I like it. I think you never know. Like, don't worry, because you might even wildcard by the time you get to the week that you want to be using Quansah and Vida players. You might actually just like be wildcarding by then or have tons of transfers. You'll know a lot more by then. So your team looks fine. Niels, how are you on Odegaard? I think what I'll do is next week I'll talk more about Arsenal, because this one can't be quick fire yet.
Definitely, yeah.
100%. But not, I like him, but I'm looking at all the players, all the attackers. Like, I'm just trying to get the right triple up, and it's like my favorite thing every preseason. So I'll be doing an episode on Sunday with Clayton as well on the Arsenal Bite Size Pod. So keep an eye out for that. So yeah, Aviva. Oi, Kieran, get your ass to Spaniards. Now, I only know one place in North London that's called the Spaniards Inn, and it's banging. I've been there for the food, and it's so good. So it sounds like you need to get out of here as well. But Combs says Ladapo at 4.5 million.
Not when you've got Leif Davis for Ips. Well, where does Ladapo play? I don't know how much he is either. He plays for Ipswich. I think he's a striker, isn't he?
I think it's 4.5 million.
Yeah, he's a striker who.
We were comparing him to the other striker, Cannon, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. I think you know what you're getting with a 4.5 million, or just manage your expectations with any 4.5 million striker. That hopefully you don't have to use them.
Yeah, fair enough. We've got a couple other ones. So Getty FPL says, it reminds me as well that I always forget through the show. Please, everyone, if you've enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe. A lot of the viewers, I think 60% are non-subscribed. So you might not even know that you're not subscribed. So just have a look and check, because it happens to me all the time. I think I'm subscribed to channels that I've watched every week, and it turns out I'm not, and I'm just an addict to FPL content. So please do give that a check, and just check if you're one of those, because I think we're only 9 subs away from 2,900, and that would be amazing to hit in the preseason. So final question from Elron, and then we'll get out of here. So RVN to be the Man United manager by Christmas. I do personally not think Ten Hag's days are like very long. Like, I think they're numbered either way. And the way the preseason's gone, I'd be surprised if like United fans were saying they're predicting like more than like a top 6 or top 5 maybe battle. And I think that's being generous. I think some of them would tell you that they're expecting 8th place and stuff. So a lot of teams are making progress right now. And obviously, I'm sure they could do well, but it relies on like some of the young guns really coming through. So this would have to be like a huge season for like an Ahmed, a Xerxes. Like, everything's just got to go really well. Rashford has to come back. Like, Luke Shaw's got to pop. Like it can all happen. It can happen. But like, so far in preseason, at least what I'm saying is from what we've been seeing and how it's all going and stuff, like, it doesn't quite feel like that is the case yet. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I think he'll be gone.
Yeah, he might be gone. I guess the key thing for any United fans who might be worried are worry less about him and look more at the fact that you've got Christopher Vivell now, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox have all come in. So now, regardless, Ten Hag is a terrible scout and at getting transfers in players, right? He's terrible at it. Leave him to just manage the players and get Omar and Jason to fix the rest. And I think he has a good chance. But yeah, it's weird for Ruud to turn down a first-team management job, even if it was Burnley, unless he's quietly going, maybe it's me. Although hopefully they haven't said that to him, because it'd be really awkward to be assistant manager going, yeah, no, you can do it, Ten Hag. I really hope you succeed.
Cannot undermine him and back talking to the players. Yeah,
start Anthony. Start him up front. He's our main striker. I saw him in training. He was great. No. Yeah, so look, wait and see. But Man United fans should feel hopeful about the backroom staff turnover, because that is a fantastic position now.
Yeah, no, I think they've definitely made huge progress. The stadium plans sound incredibly exciting as well. There's going to be investment in the women's team, the youth teams, the whole area. Like, it's honestly like it must be an exciting time. So jokes aside, like, they've got a few players in already. Although like the system or tactics haven't quite looked like they've caught up yet. Overall, like, I think it's a great time to be a United fan. And whatever happens with Ten Hag, I think we're going to start seeing a revival in the coming years. It's just obviously these rebuilds can take some time. So yeah, I think they'd be chuffed, right? Like, they've been acting, and it's not just the manager buying players or the Glazers buying a statement signing every year to appease fans to sell shirts. For once, it's like a cohesive strategy and a plan behind the purchases. And I think fans can see that. And it's really exciting still to see that that's the direction, because people forget, like, this is like the biggest club in the world, one of the biggest sports clubs in world football, in every sport. So yeah, so they will be back. But I just think that maybe it's all a bit harder than it seems. And these things take years, and like, clubs have become huge beasts that are like slow moving and behemoths, and like other teams are showing up to compete and spend money like Newcastle these days. Villa's doing great, right? So it's honestly, I am so excited for Premier League season. That's what I'm going to leave you boys with. So I hope to see you, Kieran. Next week, is it at the Fest? So if anyone's in London or in the UK, obviously the boys Ed and Johnny and Mark Southerns as well from Black Box, they're hosting a Fantasy Football Fest to open game week 1. So everyone's going to be in the Vauxhall Food Market from 3 p.m. The Fulham Man United matches on that day. I'm going to go. I think a lot of people are going. I'm going to be there from midday, so 3 hours before it opens. I'm going to be at Mother Kelly's by the Riverside. I booked a space for a pre-fest meets. So yeah, everyone come. And actually, the funny thing is, both these lads here, I met Kieran at a meets in London. Jarrod's hosted his own meets as well for us. Big stuff's going on out here, all international. So through wanting to meet offline with fellow like-minded fantasy football players, we've all ended up finding new friends. So yeah, get yourself to one of those if you can. If you're in one of the cities, there's like 30 to 40 cities with FPL meets. Go and check it out. But take care, guys. I'm going to get the pod uploaded, and peace. And hopefully I see you two some point this season again.
Yes. Sure. Tell us, man. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah,
really appreciate it, Nima. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure to have you, and just where people can find you at Fantasy Pavillion for Jarrod and at FPL_discomfort for Kieran. The links will be in the pod and video descriptions. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next Wednesday for the RMT Roast My Team special. Please start submitting your team screenshots when you're sure it's the last one. Don't send me one today and one next Tuesday, please. So because some years we go through 100 to 200 every year. It's the last episode we do every preseason, and it's one of the most popular. So please just submit your teams. We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna just sit here roasting teams for hours. So see you all next week. Peace. Take care.